What are some key things to remember in Brawl mirrors? I mean, I literally went over this with the synchronization of your DPS plus Ryan pressure. So whether you're playing with Maywall or Doomfist Punch or whatever, like these guys need to be doing something synchronized. Angles. So you don't have a lot of heroes that take angles, but the ones that do need to be taking angles, like the Diva, Mccree, etc. And decisive ult plan. So know exactly what you're doing and what you're saving ultimates for, what you're doing. Like there's no, because it's not like with other comps, like for example spam, sometimes you can scuff step up and the Widow will still kill 6, you know, or the Ashe will still click heads, or you know, the Tracer will still get a pulse bomb. But like it doesn't have like Brawl, you need to have a decisive and clear ult plan, otherwise it's not going to work very well. I'm very briefly answering that question. I really struggle to understand the concept of high ground playing Reinhardt, except playing Reinhardt in defense first point Gibraltar. What is the task or benefit of Reinhardt and high ground, and when should you drop? The benefit is knowing that high ground is strong. So high ground is strong. It's not strong for you, but it's strong for your DPS and for your supports. It's safe up there. They've got good sightlines up there. Now, Reinhardt doesn't do jack standing on high ground with his hammer. But what he does is he knows that the enemy team is going to try and fight for high ground. And if they don't, then the Reinhardt's friendly squishies will kill the enemy team. So he holds high ground, knowing that he's going to be assaulted on high ground because the enemy team also wants high ground. If they ignore high ground, they're lost. They lose the fight anyway. So what you do is you hold high ground, anticipating the enemy team to attack that high ground, and you defend your team that way. You see what I'm saying? If the enemy team doesn't contest high ground, they're lost. They lose. But it's not good for you as a Reinhardt. It's good for your team. And so you hold space as Reinhardt by holding high ground, even though it's not good for you, but it's because it's good for your team. You should drop when there's members of your teammate off of the high ground that need your protection or or the cart, the point is becoming a problem. In other words, you have to stop the cart. Otherwise, you know, you guys are just going to lose or they're going to cap or whatever. How much did the headshot insta-kill nerf affect Ashe's viability and ladder and higher elos? Sort of. It wasn't major. What hurt Ashe more was her ammo change, because it reduced her overall DPS output. But I mean, it definitely, I'm not gonna lie to you, it affected her, but she's not trashier. Why do you have the egg roll in your Discord? Because you've been, I don't know, probably because you're yapping off. It's like egg, something other, hatchling, worm eater, fledgling, pigeon, dove, flying chicken, big bird. It was supposedly, we tried to do it to where like the more people talk, the higher rank they would get, and it didn't work because Lightwaves did it, and Lightwave sucks. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't really know if it's even working or not. What if the friendly squishies drop like bots? Well, then you drop like bots with them. Yeah, you can send in a question right now. I'm gonna try and get through all these, but I'm not sure if I will. Wow, that's a really low sense, I think. What? Who told you this is too high for Widow? What? What? That's like 2720. What? Who told you this was too high for Widow? They must have misunderstood. They must have misunderstood what you were saying. That's lower than my sense, and I have like a very low sense. You're rapidly approaching Jonak level sense. What? No. You need to up it. You need to up it. You're not going to be able to play with like Widow. You could probably get away with that, but you're going to have a really hard time with like aggro flicks. So I'd probably say at least like 3.5 for Widow. And for Tracer, you're probably going to have an easier time with like 4K. You can make it work with lower, obviously, but that's certainly not I would not take it any lower. Certainly not. What makes an Orisa player good at the hero? Halts and uptime, really. In other words, like properly cycling, like timing your shields and your fortifies so that you can continue like maintain uptime with your value, your ability to contest or control space, and then obviously like landing halts that are actually useful, not just like throwing a halt and oh, okay, you moved me a little bit, or you know, okay, that was disruptive slightly, but like actually getting good value out of your halt. That and obviously mechanics. As a coach, what is the best way to help your team go from tier 3 into contenders? I feel like I'm just doing one-on-ones, VOD reviews, live coaching, a specific goal, and eliminate mistakes, make people better. Would my new method of weekly goals and stuff be better? Yeah, that'd be helpful. Like incorporate these into your reviews. I don't think bolstering your staff is really necessary. Now, I'd focus on yourself and doing a better job at what you're doing in the organization that you're working with. Now, I know you're young, from another post you made elsewhere, but work on incorporating like goals, weekly goals, keeping players accountable, and work on like your communicational skills. So you're a kid. I'm gonna be honest. You're a kid. Doesn't mean you can be you're a bad coach. Doesn't mean that you have any necessarily shortcomings, but you're definitely going to have some things that you're going to need to work on just because you lack life experience when it comes to communication. So you're going to be have a harder time dealing with like player issues. But you might as well start now. Work on your communication. Work on being a good encouragement. Help keep players accountable. Ask for feedback from your players. I don't care if you're 4, take some feedback, look to improve, but like and properly give yourself goals and structure as a coach as well. Like, how many one-on-ones are you doing? What team VOD reviews work best for your team? All that kind of stuff. Boomer moment. Shut your mouth. Not a question, but you're talking about the importance of mental in your game performance. I want to share my experience with the server you. I've never really cared about maintaining a routine. How is that important? When I started paying attention to my biology class to watch some videos of how the brain works, I decided to give it a try. I felt the change the first day. I was feeling like a superhero. I was rationing everything so fast. Ratiocinating. Is that a word? Ratiocinating. Yes, it is. The mental process of passing from cognition of premises to cognition of conclusion. Yes, it's a word. I was more confident about my decisions. My reflexes were better, and a girl told me I'm handsome, so that gave me 50 extra confidence boosts too. Yeah, nice. What do you think about it? I mean, obviously, yeah. Obviously. You're from Brazil? Yeah, sure. Your English is fine. This is your routine. If anyone wants to read it, I'm 15 years old. I drink coffee every single day. I forgot to write this. Okay. Wake up 6:30 a.m. Online class 7 to 12:30. Breakfast 8 to 8:30. Mid-morning snack 10:30. Lunch 12 to 12:30. Oh, we get to expand this. Playing Overwatch 2 to 6. Afternoon snack 4. Turn off the PC 10. Sleep 10:30. I'm eating less at breakfast and lunch so I can have my snacks. That was my body uses less energy for digestion at once and a dessert during the day. I mean, sure. Like I'm not a dietitian. I know a little bit about this stuff. And I can use my judgment and say that I'm sure this works just fine. So keep doing what you're doing. What works for you might not work for everybody else, but I'm sure would work for everybody. Just depends on what that working is. So good for you. This man's grinding. Should BAP off angle with Mccree in the Brawl comp? Very rarely. Sometimes you will, but you need to maintain. So a lot of times with the off angles that Mccree might take in Brawl might mean that he breaks LOS with his Reinhardt. And as a BAP, that's almost something you never want to do. So you have to kind of like maintain LOS on your right. Now that might mean you could split a little bit. And there are circumstances maybe we need to go for like a flank window or something like that. But for the most part, no. Hypothetically speaking, if I were to make a Mccree go, what are the big concepts to include? Advice when playing in a poke dive, since my knowledge is rushing this complicated, how much Mccree's playing Brawls eventually would be very important in big chungus. Okay. Mccree guide is positioning. So positioning would be about flanks and space / range. So in other words, the big thing with Mccree is you should always, hi guys, I'm a major midget guide. And making sure that you're adjusting the range that you're playing into the composition that you're playing into. So sometimes Mccree is in an unusual position where he plays into Sombra, plays into Tracer, plays into Reaper, but he also plays into Widowmaker, Ashes, and Hanzo. And obviously if you're playing Mccree into sniper compositions, you want slightly shorter sightlines than they. So you look for angles that don't have super long sightlines. But if you're playing into Sombras and Tracers and Reapers and Junkrats and things like that, you want to play not max range, but you want to play at a range maybe even a little outside your fall off, just so you can fully utilize your poke advantage. The next thing I want to be talking about is like cooldown usage, which for Mccree is commonly misused. So roll is something, really roll and flash are both used when your off angle is being contested. In other words, you can either utilize roll flash aggressively on your off angle, but most of the time you want to find a good off angle that makes you really dangerous, that makes people want to come after you, and then you can use roll and flash to defend yourself. That's the goal. Very rarely will you aggressively be looking for roll and flash opportunities. Oftentimes you'll just take a position that makes the enemy team do something to stop you, and that's where roll and flash are really useful. Obviously there are exceptions to that rule. For ultimate, I would talk about either counter engage or engage. High noon is an ultimate that can be used very conservatively or very aggressively. For counter engage, the enemy team engages on you, you high noon from a conservative location. You engage on the enemy team, you high noon from a conservative location. The only other thing I'd say about is high noon is that high noon can be used like Reaper ult mid-fight And if you're doing it mid-fight, you can often be in a really, really aggressive position. So I don't like McCree's like high nooning early on a super crazy off angle because they can get shot really easily. But if you're doing it mid-fight when there's other distractions, that's where you see the r/Overwatch 6Ks, because there's mid-fight, people aren't paying attention, and then McCree just drops in, right? I would touch on how peeling for your backline does not always mean that you're stacking directly on top of your backline, but taking a slight off angle to where you can still peel the flashbang, but that you're not clumped up in one giant ball. But that maybe you're denying a Doomfist from starting his flank by positioning off, that you're poking out the Winston pre-dive a little bit, but you're not completely isolated. A lot of people swap McCree as a counter swap to Doomfists and Sombras and things like that, but they end up playing all in a clump, and you know, like your whole value, yeah, maybe you flashbang him once he's in, but you don't really play to your strengths in that instance. Okay, that's all I'm giving you. Good luck. Advice on playing into poke and dive. Poke is short sightlines. Look for, just like Reaper, play for short sightlines, play for short sightlines, play for short sightlines, play for short sightlines. You're much better at like short sightline duels than any poke hero, really. And then dive, it's the same thing. You want to be looking for more disciplined off angles, not quite as split, and slightly longer sightlines most of the time. I wouldn't overcomplicate it. Is there a difference between Brawl and Rush? Not really. Like, just people say Brawl is short range, Rush involves speed. Sometimes you can have a Brawl comp that doesn't have speed. Sometimes you just have like like, you know, on a Orisa Sig comp with like a Brig that has a capability to go in and brawl with you, but they don't have speed. So it's people. This question comes up all the time. It just doesn't matter. Like, who gives a rip? Like, nobody gives a flying fart. All this thing is a last minute Tracer Ball, dive or not? Yes, it was dive. It was dive. They didn't even play Mccree at the time, and you saw a lot of Ashe and Echo. Yes, this is dive. Tracer Ball is dive. Some people say it's just Tracer Ball, chasing the Tracer Ball, Tracer while the Zen McCree kill. I mean, that's just dive. People don't understand that when people play dive at a very high level, especially a dive near, there isn't a lot of actually diving. It's a lot of fighting for map control, and then by the time you get set up for a dive, sometimes the fight's already over. If people who say this don't understand how a dive works. I mean, people would watch Reaper, Sombra, Winston, Diva, Moira, Lucio, which is like the hardest dive possible, and you played it in the mirror like a Brawl comp. You didn't play it like dive in. Nobody just dives in unless you're playing into like spam or something, and even then that's not proper. I've been seeing a lot of Ryan Diva and higher level ranked because Diva is really good at controlling off angles, denying the enemy McCree, and using her own off angles and high ground to punish the enemy Ryan/Bap Lucio backline. Ryan takes space, Diva splits off and either denies the enemy team off angle or denies the or enables her own off angle. If someone were to get into analytics of Overwatch, where would they start? So this is the tough one. I would recommend working for a team that would be interested in letting you. So you might not be able to provide, like, I know analysts are criminally underused, but also stats suck in Overwatch and most analysts suck. So it's like a push-pull for me because I've not really had a lot of good experiences with analysts. They don't really provide a lot of value for me, but maybe you're the difference. Maybe you're actually like really, really good at your job and you really enjoy it and you could provide a lot of value. In which case you need to find a team that would be willing to let you take the scrim stats, etc. And, you know, through SATA scrim or whatever, and start studying, start working, start figuring out and start utilizing those numbers to try and figure out map win percentages, composition win percentages, hero win percentages, and try and work with the staff and see if there's something that you can pull away from that. Try and find out like how often first death has like an impact on a certain map, how often this side rotation works on this map versus this side rotation. But you need to be working with a team, otherwise you're not going to get enough you're not going to get enough material to work with. And I'm sure a lot of teams would be okay with it. I would like to take a deeper dive into analytics of Overwatch like they do in professional sports as baseball. Yeah, so it's good because I think what I was talking about, like rotations, first fight win percentage, first death, which team, like for example, I'd be interested to know like what ultimate is the most powerful in the current meta, like in terms of fight win percentage, what ultimate is used first most often, like the win percentage of your team on this map versus this map. Those are the stats that matter. Damage per 10, heals per 10, complete horse manure, worthless, totally worthless. Very dependent on like which team is winning and very dependent on like the team's play style. It's not useful at all. So like more like win percentages, fight win percentages and like map win percentages and the quality of rotation, first death, things like that, way more interesting to me. So that would be something. And like I said, you need to get involved with tier 3. Could be a GM team, 4.2, 4.3. Any team that scrims to any decent amount and has some consistency with the compositions they play, that's something that you could be pursuing. You could even find a couple of teams if you have the time to. But that would be my recommendation. Good luck. Analytics and Overwatch is a really, really rough position. As on defense, when they have flankers ball, should I be playing close to my team or avoiding? So as far away from you as you possibly can without being completely isolated. Sometimes it's okay to be completely isolated, like Gibraltar first defense. You can play like on the opposite high ground, but as far as you can. And there's exceptions as well. For example, if you're playing like with a Brig Mercy or something like that, or like with a Mercy, you don't need to be playing closer to your Mercy for her to heal you. She can fly to you and heal you. So you would play even further away there. But if you're playing with like a Lucio or maybe like a Brig where you could benefit from heal aura, inspire, maybe you play a little bit closer to them. But yeah, like you have to find the balance between there. I know it's a cop-out answer, but yeah, as far as you can away without being unpeelable. First point Anubis, I think back high ground on first point Anubis is fine. And then if they dive, if that Somber like flanks around, Tracer flanks around and starts to chase you on the high ground, you can drop and go up the stairs closer to your team. But even then, you're still not on top of your team. You are right to feel the fear of this. This is the fear. And it's also, it ruins your sight lines as well. Okay. I watch your coaching review on YouTube. I was wondering if the same things that going to micro-drawing applies to one-on-one session with team player coaching differs. Yes. So the difference between a one-on-one session and a team coaching session is with a one-on-one session, it has there's more discussion, there's more one-on-one direct impact, and there's also the players being directly spoken to, so it's easier to maintain their focus. That being said, I still heavily avoid going into too much detail. Let's put it this way. When I'm doing a stream coaching review, there's roasting, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of explanation of concepts. Sometimes we talk about a lot of different things. Sometimes I need a big picture and I take a long time to be thorough so I fully understand the gameplay. But if I were to do an off-stream follow-up review with that player, it would probably be no longer than 30 minutes. And it would be just hashing over the stuff we already went over. Hey, how are we doing here? How are we doing here? How are we doing here? How are we doing? What about this? What about this? What about this? Good, good. How are you doing? Okay, what do you think about this? Okay, move on. So yes, heavily applies, but there is a little bit more loose with the length because a lot of it can be just more discussional based. I approach those by first getting an idea of like what they need to work on, and then after that we set goals, we evaluate, we keep the discussion flowing, and we give them some goals to work on, and then we just keep each other accountable, or keep the accountability there. Like, are you actually working at those things? How's our improvement, etc. Yeah, this is for players I'd long-term work with. Yes, Tesla. If the enemy team is running something like double win conditional blade and grab dragon, how do you play win against that? I mean, their comp is just like if they're playing the problem with running like Zarya, Hanzo, Ana, Genji is it's a poop comp. It's a poop composition. So yeah, you lose to ults, but like Hanzo should have a really hard time building ult. The Zarya should have a really hard time building grab. Nanoblade should take forever to build because there's not another dive partner to bait attention with the Genji. So I mean, you first off, I would if something like this, have a trance, have a sound barrier or something like that, or be split to where like they don't just forehead win every time they get an ult combo. But also you should be winning like every single fight in between. So the answer is just forehead, be better. And have a support ult so that you can counter one of those. As for you early on stream, what would your Overwatch League fantasy? Neapolitan, I swear, I'm not answering Overwatch League fantasy. I don't know squat about Overwatch League individual players. I know very little. How do you know when you've improved enough at a constant pick a new comp to focus on while playing? How would you referencing it to me? So I would like give yourself a couple weeks, and you want to see some noticeable improvement at that. Like there is no hard measure. Like I wouldn't say, okay, let's say it's like not wasting sleep dart into shields and like timing them properly. Maybe it's a 20, 30, 40% improvement, 50% improvement. I don't know. Not landing more sleeps, but like actually timing them properly. If they land or not, unlucky. But you have to just use your judgment. Like so much of this is just use your judgment and staying on top of it. I mean, part of the goal is that you don't have to stay on top of it. You just kind of got to where you don't even think about it anymore. And then you move on, then you come back to it later on. Because I don't know enough about the Overwatch League individual players. There's hundreds of players. I haven't kept track of them. I don't watch Korean contenders. Haven't watched so-and-so play ranked. I didn't watch a lot of Overwatch League last season. So, oh yeah, I need to tell my camera on, sorry. I bumped it and it kind of clunked up earlier and I forgot about it. I want to see your shin. Okay. I watch a bit of Jakaro 19 is, oh my gosh, there's so many more. You guys are killing me. I watch a bit of Jakaro 19. His gameplay and rank seems to always be to play slow and build nano Zarya charge. And it was in first level of the match, usually leads to a hard engage with nano Winston. He mostly faces Brawl comps and rank, but sometimes you can see Brig snipers. My question is, how does the defensive team handle this, assuming it's first fight with no ults? Basically, I'm asking is, how do you hide count with no ults of your own? I mean, you just know it's coming. Like, it's coming. If you know, okay, guys, we fed nano. Here comes the nano. Guys, position around this nano. Absorb this nano. Because if they don't get the fight win off this nano monkey, they're screwed because they've been feeding DPS ults this entire time. And they just use nano. And they just use their monkey cooldowns. And then we can just forehead win. The reason why this works so well is because the enemy team probably doesn't have the synergy and coordination to actually play around that. Now, if you're playing ranked and you're thinking, okay, well, I don't have that synergy and coordination in ranked, well, save your sleep dart. Save your bash. Save your projected bubble, right? Like, there are ways that you individually can have an impact on dealing with that better. Hey, best guess value out of Nano Winston. I mean, make sure that you have a good engagement location that either allows you to directly be on an off angle or jump an off angle, and make sure that you're playing within your team's kill box. A lot of nano monkeys go like, oh, I'm diving the enemy backline, nano, but the team's like, hey, we're over here, can we help? Let them come in a little bit further so you can get the proper follow-up with your team while you're on backline. Nano monkey can sometimes solo kill people, but a lot of times it's a good way to just get yourself a one-way ticket to spawn room. Well, it's broken and ranked probably because double bubble. In other words, he's going to get Zarya bubble, which makes it a lot harder to deal with. But that if the nano monkey's just instantly deleting you, then your Ana's probably positioned like a moron, or your Brig's positioned like a moron, or your BAP or whatever. Because like, yeah, you can't deal with monkey bubble and Zarya bubble and nano instantly, because if you get landed on, you're dead. But you need to be able to actually like anticipate that and play around that. You just said that they fed nano so that they're continually bleeding charge. You need to play around it. No, you need to wait. You have already eaten. My cat. When and how should a dry fight be played, and what are important concepts to remember? When you have like no reasonable way to win the next fight, and you need to like basically assume that you're going to lose this fight, but you need to win the next one. So there's two concepts to remember in how to take a dry fight. There's only two ways to win. One with an aggro or clutch play. In other words, where you're like, okay, we're not going to win this fight, but we're going to scare you guys really big, and maybe we might like force you guys to overult because we're scaring you guys. Or you go really, really passive and hold space. In other words, you're playing very split, you're playing very disciplined, you're playing to poke them out, spam them out, bleed them out from multiple angles, and make the fight as difficult as possible. You're just playing to lose as slowly as you can to try and bait out as much of the resources as you possibly can, and maybe you guys click heads. Maybe you get a pop-off moment or whatever, and that forces them again to overult. Or you can, take that time to build up your other ultimate. So it depends on the circumstance about which one is better. And I'm not going to go into the details of that, but those are the big ones. It's about, do we want to take an aggressive fight, or do we want to take a very passive fight? Because if you get anywhere in between, that's where a dry fight just has a lot less value. I'm bad with Sigil. I just use it. I'm better before school, and so can't win. All right. Thank you for that. As a ball, when do I mess with the backline and win the front line? Almost always backline. Frontline is just like if the only time I'd mess with frontline is when your disruption through rolling or booping is going to displace them too much. So like, for example, if there's like a Reinhardt holding in a choke and you can boop him past the choke, then maybe you miss the Reinhardt there. Maybe there's a little bit of value there. Obviously, Reinhardt's not a great option because he's got the anti-CC, but you can boop an Orisa off of high ground. You can boop a Sigma off of high ground. Zarya doesn't have personal bubble and she's discorded. There's certainly circumstances, but it's a lot more of your judgment. The general is almost always you go for backline, or just the enemy splits, any squishies on a flank or on an angle, because that's where you're built better for that. You're just built to your gun does more, or your slam is a higher percentage of their HP. The boop is a higher percentage of their HP. Squishies are more fragile, so if they're displaced, they're more likely to be punished, etc. Built differently. Build differently. You're killing me. 100 more point A attack. Your team is on his end. Double hits gain Ryan Zarya. So yeah, 2 stars. So what you want to do is you want to like synchronize your pressure for when your team is like starting to push through choke. And yeah, you probably don't want to like go heavily spam in there, but you can do a lot of roll throughs there. Roll through, force sleep dart, then heavy commit. If you can get sleep dart out, you heavy commit, and then you roll out again. Yeah, you get nuked a little bit, but you can still punish them. Now, another thing here is the double hit scan. Where is that Widow playing? Where is that Ashe playing? If they're playing with their backline, okay, yeah, not a lot you can do there. But if they're playing split in the high ground, trying to get more damage down your team, well, then there's your opportunity. Make that Widow play with their team. Make that Ashe play with their team. That's kind of what you're looking for. I think one of my main weak points with the brig is my rally usage. I think my timing is that bad, but I don't know how to use it. Your tips advance how to use rally. Advanced tips. I mean, just make sure that your team is in a position to get value. Like the team fight starts right now. We're pushing through the choke. Now you rally. You don't pre-rally. Because the ult charge is, or the ammo or the rally armor is not permanent, and so you want to be making sure that you're getting full value out of it as you're going. So you know the fight's just started. They're starting the first shield trades. Rally. Make sure that it cannot be kited. I would rather you rally at a half a second late or 1 second late than for your rally to get kited. So something that you need to be reviewing on your own. Every time you feel you use a rally, go back, look at the team fight. Did I use it at the proper time? So that's the big one. How do you probably counter wall and Mei versus Mei? I mean, you can either just like wall off their Mei, so you know you're pushing through a choke, and they're you wall off their Mei, so you can push through here. Their Mei will be able to wall after, but by that point you probably are going to push to a position where their wall is not going to be as good. You can just wall first. When I mean, there's no counter wall. Like I'm trying to think of like the best way to answer this. Like you're focused less on like getting a good counter wall and just getting a good wall. Period. Like the only time you should be thinking about like counter walling is like if your entire purpose is to bait them in so that you could do something in a small location, or if you're counter walling, it might be like I'm gonna wall their maze so we can rotate through a choke, something like that. But I need an actual visual example. Like I would need, okay, well, how would I wall in this X fight with a timestamp, with a video, with a replay, something like that? Because this is extremely vague and it's an extremely advanced, nitty-picky topic, and I'm not getting any visuals with it. Should I be playing Diva or Zarya in my Master Rank games when we're doing Rush? I don't know. How good are you at Diva? How good are you at Zarya? What map are you playing? Is there a lot of high ground? Are they playing, is it a Rush Mirror? Are they playing Hit Scan? Are they playing like Reaper, Moira, Mei? Are they playing Mccree or Ashe? Like it depends. Like Diva's better in high grounds. Diva's better against squishier like offingles and things like that. Zarya, if you're playing with the Doom, Zarya can help with your Doom. That makes Zarya slightly more attractive. We went over that. Are you a better Diva? Are you a better Zarya? Etc. Etc. Oftentimes Diva is also better against non-Nero comps because she can deal with like heavy dive heroes and heavy spam heroes a little better than Zarya. When should I not go for flanks off angles? So I would not say never, but I would say their flanks and off angles are a little less necessary early in the fight as you're establishing your like maybe you're rotating. Flanks and off angles become more attractive as the fight goes on. So maybe flanks and off angles become less attractive early in fight, but also against comps that are extremely mobile. That can isolate you and kill you really fast. So you need to be very disciplined about your flanks and off angles against dive variations, like balls, tracers, things like that. How would you approach coaching for a game that you aren't an expert and has very few online resources? Then don't coach the game, coach the people. So if you're coaching a game that you're an expert at, don't worry so much about like the actual game itself and the strategies. Focus instead on the players that you're coaching. Are they taking good care of themselves? How is their training structure? How is their training environment? How is their health? How is their sleep? How are they communicating with their teammates? How are they working together? How is their mental approach to the game? Like, don't coach the players or coach the game, coach the players. That would be the first thing I'd look at. If I were doing a hair check, what's the best way to know when to use Amp on Lucy when playing Brawl Mirror? Generally, Amp is great to use once we've seen Mei wall trades or Doomfist punch trades, because you can either be speeding your team in and looking for an opportunity to aggress, or speeding them out, or just give them Amp speed so that they can kind of decide if they want to go in or out. But generally, once the combat has actually started, like there's an actual Rein trade, Mei trade, Doom trade, either Amp heals or Amp speed is a good opportunity. Is a good thing to do, not a good opportunity. Should Widow flank off angle if your team has no divas can already greed contest sites and a soft angle like Ashe? Yes. Yeah, Widow versus Ashe. Like your Ashe can contest the shorter sightlines, you contest the longer sightlines. Yes. I mean, double sniper was all about like holding as many angles as you possibly could with your Zen, Widow, Hanzo. Excuse me. Opinion on scrimming on in scrim live coaching and how do you approach it? I keep it's okay. And I did it a lot more than I think some of my peers, but I always had to keep it really, really basic. And a lot of times I almost never taught. So like, just don't teach, remind, or encourage. Don't teach, remind, or encourage, or keep people accountable. Teach Just don't teach. Just don't talk. You know, like you should be like a sound bite. You know what I'm saying? Focus or rotate. Like we gotta remember, we gotta rotate. We gotta hustle. Like don't forget shot calling, ult calling. But yeah, even between maps, like you should not be really teaching. I know a lot of coaches that like, you know, they see something go wrong, like, well, guys, here's the thing. As the next map is loading up, map control is a really important concept. If we're playing Hanzo and Mei together, who do you think should be playing with a Sigma? Now, my problem with that, and no, screw you. Like, jump off a cliff, moron. Like, no, nobody has time for that. Okay. What caused GOATs to break Overwatch so quickly compared to other games as being figured out? Because it abused Overwatch's over-reliance and objective. Objective being really, really strong in Overwatch plus ultimates being really strong in Overwatch allowed heroes that were strong around objective, so like sustain heroes, holy cow, to abuse objective. So you could just sit on point with 3 healers and 3 tanks and just survive anything long enough so that you could build ultimates, or long enough to where objective became a serious problem. Do you think if OpenQ came back that some variation of it would be still, yeah, almost certainly. I mean, sustain is still pretty strong. It's not quite as strong as it used to be, but probably. Sure. Like don't overthink it, Bold. You are playing Widow. You are playing a sniper hero. You want long sightlines. GG's. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in any situation that you're playing Widow with another DPS, with a flanky DPS, with a hit. You're playing long sightlines. You were always playing long sightlines. Almost always. You might go for a cheeky little close flank there to catch them off guard, but that never changes the fundamental design of the hero. Like, for example, Tracer, people talk about Tracer playstyles a lot, but they're talking out of their butt cheeks because, yes, Tracer has slightly different playstyles, but you still play Tracer on a flank, on an angle, pressuring the enemy team. That's it. It's the same playstyle. It's just slight variations of it. It's not a completely different playstyle. Any tips on how to utilize bombs better as in a Brawl mirror? Make sure that the enemy team can't counter rush you with like Beat or Blizzard or something like that, and make sure that your team, it's like finding a balance between is the enemy team in a position where a bomb could split them that we could punish or might get a kill, and or are we going to get punished for not having a matrix? And if you are unsure, it's always fine to just go really aggressive on the backline as D.Va or really aggressive on an angle and just use your bomb to remech and try and do so in a location where you can remech safely. So high grounds are a great position to go look for that. I have a teammate who mauls and clutters comms and complains constantly, and even recently muted himself in the middle screen and went, how would you recommend dealing with this? I mean, this is why you talk with this player and talk with this player and be like, hey man, like, we want to get better, you want to get better, we want to train and spend time together, but this is not it. So like at that point you just have to set standards, and if the standards aren't met, you give him the boot. The best thing for him might be getting kicked because it actually wakes up to that, hey, I'm acting like a complete butthole and bad things happen when I act like a complete butt. So I mean, you would be respectful and responsible, and I would also not just yell at him. I would also be like, hey, what can we be doing better so that this situation doesn't happen, because this situation is unacceptable, right? You cannot do this anymore. Is there anything we can be doing better? We'll do our best to help accommodate that, but also we cannot you're not allowed to do that. That's not okay. But do take some responsibility on yourself, you know, be respectful, but also you can't be tolerant of that. There's some things that you should just not tolerate, and that is not something that we should tolerate.